Good morning. Welcome to Mum's Space Summit. This is a time for us to listen to some of our speakers who are parents themselves, and this is a space for parents and also for individuals. Today, we are going to meet some very interesting people who will tell us about the experience going into the deep forest. It's a forest of a very personal and intimate experience. And I consider it a very great privilege to moderate this summit and this session, because we are given a privilege of listening to them, sharing their very personal and intimate experience. It's a forest full of snakes and bats and animals and creatures of the dark. The sun does not penetrate into this forest. And these friends of ours have spent, some of them, many years in that forest. And somehow they managed to get out of it alive. And they are here with us. First, I want to introduce Eileen, who was a former national gymnast and hurdler, a springboard diver, a very outstanding athlete from a very young age. In 2014, she wrote and launched her music and book entitled Teach a Life for a Life. And that book was one of the top sellers at our leading bookstore at that time. I was privileged to be the guest of honor at that event. Now, she spends most of her time teaching violin as a teacher and as a performer, and has initiated a number of ground-up movements. Strings for Kindness, which is part of the Singapore Kindness Movement GAMS collection, I suppose, and the 3 a.m. Music Collective. She brings hope and shows sympathy to people with troubled minds, and through music. So that's Eileen at the extreme right. Next to Eileen is Yen Lu, Executive Chairman, Whole Tree Foundation. Born in Taiwan, she's now been in Singapore for many years after spending some of that growing up years in Japan as well as in USA. Co-founder and director, Asia Institute of Mentoring, Chairman, Singapore Creations, founding partner, Fat Fish Media Lab, executive mentor, YSISEA, and founder of the Deep Human Movement. Yen Lu is a former Apple Distinguished Technologist, serial entrepreneur, angel investor, mentor and advisor, social innovator, and humanist. I'm glad to tell you that he doesn't eat humans. With the launch of his family foundation and other social impact initiatives, Yen Lu devotes his time serving both society and the nation in its various capacities. He's on a life mission to help bring about a kinder, gentler, and more inclusive, and more just and sustainable world. That's Yen Lu. And finally, we have Trisha on my right. She's a founder of a non-profit social enterprise, Catalyst, connection that seeks to destigmatize mental illness and advocate integrated care. She provides counseling and coaching services as well as mental health literacy talks. Her specialty is in the area of psychosis, which most people would understand as hallucination. Trisha is a survivor of depression and bipolar disorder over 14 years, and she strongly believes that the current mental health care approach needs to factor in the psycho-spiritual aspects of mental health. There you have it. We have three very wonderful people, and they will now share with us their own journey. So Eileen, you were in the deep forest. I call it the dark, deep woods. Now, what was it like?
Well, good morning. Is it morning now? Yes. Good morning, everyone. Yes, as what Dr. Wan was saying about my past and how I got into the woods. So my past included being a former national athlete, where I trained in China when I was a kid. It was during that time when I was a kid that I unknowingly developed social performing anxiety as well as PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Well, I really didn't know it until it got full-blown in my 30s. So what happened in my 30s? How I got into the woods. In 2015, MediaCorp has did a program. The producer did some interviews, and the question that he asked went really deep into my childhood, and that was like opening up a Pandora's box. That was the time when I suddenly realized there's something wrong with me, and I went to deep depression. And at that point in time, I still didn't realize that I was actually in a depressive mode. One day in 2015, I slammed my hands into the kitchen knife. Not knowing why I did it, I just did it because there was a trigger. And the entire kitchen looked like a criminal scene. But it was also during this time that my husband realized, oh, this girl needs help. Initially, I still didn't want to get help because I was thinking, this is really part of me. Why should I actually make a change? It's just me. I'm just feeling useless. So let it be me. Let myself be feeling useless about it. But no, he said, no, you have to seek help. Okay, so we actually did online virtual consultation with a psychologist. We did a few sessions, but I realized it didn't really help. It didn't really help not because the psychologist was good, but I think it was my part. I was not ready to seek help. I didn't feel I needed help. In 2016, 1st February 2016, I decided that my life was at the end of it. I didn't want to live anymore. So that was it. I made plans and I really wanted to leave this world. I was very lucky enough, my husband actually found me. But it was a wake-up call for me on 1st February 2016. I realized I really need to help. I need to seek for help because I cannot do this to my husband anymore. It does bring him stress for me to be acting this way. So finally, I did seek help. I started to see a psychologist. But even seeing a psychiatrist for the first time was difficult. I actually had to, or rather, just looking at the phone, just trying to make a call, it was very difficult. I was thinking, would this psychiatrist be judging me when I see him? Will he think, this girl is already so useless, there's nothing that I can do for her? Or would my friends start to think, well, what, Eileen Chai, that former gymnast, she's crazy, she's seeing a shrink, oh my goodness, what's wrong with her? So all these things were in my mind before I could actually, gather that courage to pick up the phone to make that call. And I'm glad that I actually took that courage, made a call, and saw him for the first time. My psychiatrist, his name is called Dr. Ken Ang. My first session with him, he said, well, it's really wonderful that you love to give, but you must also learn to receive. And I think part of Mom's Space Summit is a lot of moms like to give, but you must also learn to receive and learn when to actually say no to certain things and learn when to rest. So seeing the psychiatrist was the start of my journey, and it has been great.
Thank you. In fact, later on, I'm going to ask you more about that. So Yen Lu, you just heard Eileen. Some similar experience staying in that deep forest? Tell us your experience.
Yeah, happy to. Thank you, Dr. Wan. Okay, my brush with the deep, dark forest started in 2009. I remember that day very, very well. October 22nd, 2009. So 11 years ago. I remember my wife and I were at home. It's about 10:30 in the evening. My wife and I were at home. We used to play, as a family, we used to play a lot of tennis together. So which I think just came up from a tennis thing. It was sitting about 10:30 at night. And we got a call on our landline. We never get calls on our landline at 10:30 in the evening. I was wondering, who could that be? So I think I picked up the phone, my wife picked up the phone. And on the other side of the line was the Director of International Relationship at Murdoch University in Australia, where our son was studying. he told us over the phone that they had found our son's body in the parent's suicide. Of course, the first thing that and he said, asked us to make our way over as soon as we can. Of course, the first thing we told ourselves, of course, was disbelief and denial. We just talked to him 2 weeks ago. He seems okay. Of course, going back a little bit more in time, he had been suffering from manic depression for a number of years. Anyway, that evening, as parents, we took whatever we could in the luggage. We crammed everything in. I remember the first flight out that evening, which was 1:30 a.m. in the morning, to Murdoch, to Australia, Perth, Australia. It was probably the longest flight you can imagine as a parent. On that plane, I remember, we're talking, we're hoping, my gosh, that this was a mistake, that somehow, first was total disbelief. There was a mistake, that somehow maybe the school had made a mistake. Maybe the police made a mistake. Maybe God had made a mistake. We landed about 6 a.m. that morning, and of course it was not a mistake. We came face to face with our fate. We had a funeral later that week at the school. About 300 students, his friends, and faculties of the school attended that funeral. And then we had to take him back with us to Singapore, where we had a little memorial for him at home with our closest friends. This is a parent's worst nightmare, what happened. And, it was, but that first year, first few days, first months, days, weeks, that first year was very, very tough. I think I got into, it's more than the deep, dark forest. I was in the deep, dark valley. But looking back, our son actually was a very kind and caring and compassionate person. He once told us, actually when he was ill, he said, "Mom and Dad, wouldn't it be nice if we can make a difference in someone's life?" Hence, his life, his passing, his legacy became our inspiration and the genesis of our family foundation, the Ho Chi Foundation for Youth Wellness and Over the Rainbow Youth Mental Wellness Initiative. And that's the journey that we've been on for the past 10 years.
Thank you, Yen Lu. Thank you so much for sharing such an intimate and painful experience with us. And Eileen too. And now Trisha, tell us your story. I know you have been there too.
Yeah, I've battled with depression and bipolar disorder for 14 years. It all started in 2006 after I gave birth to my eldest child. I had to cope with the demands of a new mother. Breastfeeding especially was quite stressful for me. And then I also had to handle the confinement nanny who was quite stubborn and didn't really adhere to what we asked her to do. And also the presence of my mom as well. Although it was of great help to me, but then at the same time there were too many people living under one roof. 3 women living under one roof trying to get their things done. Yeah, and we are all sometimes conflictual. So it was very difficult for me. In the mornings, I would be like any other newborn mother, taking photos and uploading them onto the social media website and things like that. But when night time comes, I would be crying myself to sleep. Yeah, so I think the last straw was when one night I decided to pack all my breastfeeding machine equipment, my breast pump, my bottles, my sterilization equipment, everything. And I packed it in a bag and I decided to leave home because I could no longer stay in that space. Yeah, but on one hand, I felt like leaving home. On the other hand, I felt I cannot be so selfish because I still have to feed my girl. So I was very torn between leaving home or not. And I ended up locking myself in the bathroom and I cried my eyes out. That woke my husband up and my then husband up. And then he talked to me and managed to pacify me. And the decision then was to actually go and seek help. So which was what we did. The next day, as soon as we could, we got an appointment at KK Hospital to see their psychiatrist. Yeah. So I was diagnosed as postnatal depression, and I was given antidepressants to take. But being a trained counselor myself, I felt like it was a very much a defeat on my end because if I could not talk myself out of depression and I needed medication, then what kind of counselor am I? Right? So I had a lot of self-beating thoughts, which were very unhealthy. Yeah. And I actually did not take the medication regularly as per the dosage. Yeah. So it took me quite a while to snap out of the depression. I think one of the major factor was I was able to finally, after a lot of dilemma and after a lot of a lot of venting it out with my husband, we decided to quit the job because I was in a very stressful job that time. So additional stress doesn't work anything good for depression. So I was fortunate that I could leave the job. Yeah. So I think 1 or 2 months after I left the job, my situation really lifted. It's like coming out of the woods already, finally. Yeah. So that's my depression journey. I also want to speak a little bit about my bipolar disorder episode. Yeah, because it is not as widely understood as depression. Depression, most people think, oh, you are weepy, you cry, you cannot eat, you cannot sleep, and then you find no joy in doing things that you want to enjoy. Okay, bipolar is similar to that because it is, in other words, it's manic depressive disorder. Okay, so people like us, we go through manic state and depressive state, so it's a up and down. It's a mood disorder. The mood swings up and down. Yeah. So during one manic episode, I actually was brought to a church by a relative of mine who believed that the church leaders could help me out. What I did was actually I was fixated on winning the lottery, winning 4D. So I ran to the Singapore Pools counter barefooted. For some reason, I was in a hurry to get to the Singapore Pools counter because it was nearing their closing time. So I was trying to get myself ready, right? So I grabbed my daughter. She was 1.5 years old then. And then I grabbed my wallet and I tried to put on my shoes, but I couldn't put on my shoes. And I said, never mind, heck care, don't wear the shoes, it's okay. So that was how I did. I went barefooted from home to the shopping mall to queue up at the Singapore Pools counter. Yeah, so this is one of my manic state. Yeah. But interestingly, I was able to weave in and out of my consciousness. During those times when I weave out of it, right, I asked myself, Trisha, what are you doing here? Why are you doing here with your baby and barefooted? People will think you're crazy. Okay? But sometimes, at times, I will weave back in again and say, I want to buy that 4D because I want to lift all of us out of our poverty, so-called. Yeah. So, in the end, I managed to call my then husband and tell him, please come and bring me to the hospital because there is something seriously wrong with me. I ordinarily wouldn't do this kind of things. Yeah, so that was what he did. He came to my rescue, but before he could reach me, I drove the car off to somewhere else already. Another fixated thinking, racing thoughts came through my mind. My grandmother was dying, so I must reach her house as soon as possible and gather all the relatives to go there. So I started to text people as well on the way. Yeah, so these are the manic states, okay, as opposed to the depressive states.
Right.
So I've been coping with these two states over the years.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much. Now we all heard about the Barefoot Doctor. Today you've heard about the Barefoot
4D
4D player.
Yeah.
Well, you know, as you can see, ladies and gentlemen, these friends of ours have come out of the deep wood. I mean, they can laugh at it as they look back. They are positive. Yen Lu talk about the silver lining, you know, the son's legacy left behind that inspired them to set up a foundation to help other young people. Eileen is now spending most of her time teaching and training young people in music and contributing back to society, trying to get people to, you know, get going and be positive, and so is Trisha. Now tell us, you can jump in anytime you want. You know, how did you all get out of it? I mean, maybe getting out of it or recovery, as some of them would put it, maybe it's not that clean cut, because some people appear to recover and then they lapse back into it, and then sometimes the darkness of the valley or the deep forest still come and haunt them. So tell us about that post, you know, out of the woods experience. Maybe Yen Lu, you go ahead.
You mind if I?
Yeah,
It's
go
okay.
ahead,
It's
go
okay.
ahead.
Can I
Yeah, yeah.
permission?
Yes, please.
Thank you for that. Let me just say, I mean, I empathize with both Trisha, her journey, because our son went through the same journey in terms of manic depression before this thing happened. So we know exactly the episodes that happens. When you're in the high, you're like your Superman. And he said, I want to run for the President of the United States. That's what he told us once when he was in the high state. Can go buy 4D, whatever. But when you're low, you're really, really low. So that's the manic depressive state, which we came to learn about in a big way for us. You know, we didn't know much about mental health, and also empathize with Eileen, her journey. You know, because in my younger days, I also went through my own struggles, you know, with mental health. And it turns out that my mother had, and nobody, of course, this was 56, more than 60 years ago. She also she had, now I know about it, she's 93 this year, that she had manic depression. I'm sorry, MDD, which is major depressive disorder. She had major depressive disorder. Didn't know at the time, nobody ever talks about it, right? But we know that she had that. And thank God she's alive and she's doing well now. But she struggled for that for a long time. So let me just say, I'm gonna just break the ice here and just point out the big elephant in the room. Let me just ask everybody out here, in here, wherever you are, and this is what I ask people, you know, how many of you out there have either experienced or have a family member or know of a friend who's experienced some kind of mental health issues? Raise your hand. I mean, raise your hand, everybody. I know when I ask this question, and guess what? Even in the work, I get a lot of talk also in the workplace. In the corporate, 95%, 98% of people raise their hand. But see, the thing is that nobody talks about it. This is the big elephant in the room that nobody talks about, but it touches everybody.
That's why we're here talking about it.
Exactly, we need to talk about it. So in our work, we're big champion, advocate of mental health and mental well-being for the past 10 years now. So we had to talk about it, and I always talk about it. We always talk about it wherever, in the media and out in the community in a panel like this.
I should add that the reason why we're here talking about it is because we believe, in fact, statistically, I'm told in one particular set of stats that I saw, about 20% of women suffers from depression, and about 12% of men. And so it's actually quite, it's out there, and it's a matter of degrees too, right? And I believe that those of you who are listening in, as you listen to these first-hand experiences, if you identify with some of the symptoms and some of the things that's going on in your life, you need help, go for help. Go and look for specialist help, mental care help. Don't just ignore it, okay? So this is why we're here talking about it. Unless we can name it, we can't own it. And if we don't own it, we can't get over it. So let's do it.
Absolutely. Yeah, since you're talking about stats, so a few years ago there was a research done by for youth in Singapore, 18 to 25. It turns out that about a quarter of the youth in that age group in Singapore have shown some kind of depressive symptoms.
One in four or something like that.
1 in 4 depressive
That's
symptoms.
right.
That's
correct.
That's a big number.
Youth, yeah.
Youth. This is youth,
Yeah.
right? Of course, middle-aged men are also particularly vulnerable. We talked
Right.
about that because women tend to talk about it, and men don't,
Yeah.
because we have to show
Yeah.
we're the superior race. But we all know women are they're the superior race. We know that already, right? That's the biggest best kept secret.
Self-deception.
But you know,
Trisha, jump in.
yeah, please do.
Yeah.
Please do anytime. Yeah, please.
Yeah, so I guess for many of us, once we are trying to, or once you know your symptoms and you are trying to recover, I think personally I feel it's never easy to be 100% recovered. It's really quite difficult, but it's how we actually manage our thoughts, our emotions at that point in time. If you need medication, please do take the medication. If you need spiritual help, you go for spiritual help. So for my case, what happened was in 2018, as I was actually doing cognitive behavioral therapy with my psychiatrist. So it was like journaling, writing what you've been doing the past week, because I did see him every week. And then we'll talk about it, and then to see how we can change my train of thoughts or change my behavior based on what I've written. But parallel, I was also going to this marketplace called Christian Fellowship Ministry, where the pastor invited for that day would share certain sermons and all that. And there was one time during one of the sharing session, he did a prayer ministry. And suddenly I saw a burning, what he said was to put this thing that pulls you down onto an altar and burn it. And suddenly I saw a vision of me being burnt. It was a time when I was training in China. So, and I got so scared, I was crying, and I just ran out of the CFM marketplace session, and I went to see my doctor, my psychiatrist, and asked him what was happening. So we talked about it, and to tell the truth, that day was like an epiphany moment. It was a day that I started to recover. So I was actually on the road to recovery. But as what Dr. Wang was saying, as well as Yen Lu, as well as Trisha, I think the journey is never that easy. It's never that straight. It's never a straight line. So along the way, I still have my triggers, and I will be like suddenly, because of a trigger moment, like during the circuit breaker measures period, I would be banging on the windows. I couldn't take it anymore. I just banged on windows. I was like waking up all my neighbors, and I just couldn't take it. And my husband got scared. What was happening? I just couldn't get myself out of that moment. How my brain was thinking, this is stupid. Why am I doing this? I can see myself, I'm doing something very stupid. This is crazy. But on the other side, I'm also telling myself, I can't get out of it. I'm stuck. I'm stuck. So I went to see my psychiatrist. That was after the CB measures. So I went to see my psychiatrist, and my psychiatrist straight away said, you need to love your inner child. So why I'm talking about cognitive behavioral therapy, because that's one of the ways that we can actually help ourselves. The other way is spiritual help. But the other one that helped me was inner child. What this inner child meant was, because when I was training in China, the China situation was I was always alone. I was always on my own. My parents were not there. My friends were not there. I had my training mates. So it looks like it's a foster home. So there was no touch. There was no hugs. After finished training, you have no one to talk to. You have no one to communicate. You're just alone. There were times when there was a week where I don't even need to talk a single word. So that really affected me as a child. So, and actually, in a way, if you know about the Adverse Childhood Experience score, my ACE score is 5, which is not very good. The smaller the number, the better it is. My husband is 0. So with that in mind, so my psychiatrist, Dr. Ang, said, well, you need to love your inner child. So what this inner child, if you actually Google for it, talks about is, it's not just about loving yourself, it's about looking at the inner child inside you. Like you take a step away from yourself, and you take a look at your child, your childhood, and you say, you have to start communicating with the child and say, hey, you're doing fine now. If you have any problems, talk to me, talk to yourself. How are you doing? Last time you were a bit tough for you, but it's all right now. It's all right. So you need to keep the inner child of yours calm. So our recovery is never that straight. Triggers will still come, but it's how we want to manage it and manage our emotion, control our thoughts through these various methods. But whatever that I'm saying is actually for me. Because it was based on my discussion with my psychiatrist. So if you have perhaps some form of problem that you need help, we have to actually seek for professional help. Then the psychiatrist or psychologist can give you the right antidote solution to help you recover.
Right. Trisha, what do you say?
Yeah, I wanted to jump in to say something about the vision you had. You see, you had a vision of you being burnt in flames.
Yeah.
I have learned over my experiences or my episodes that sometimes these visions that we have, oftentimes they are actually imagery, and they are metaphorical. Yeah. So it may not be your physical body burning up, but because you might be seeking a change of some sort of your own ego, your own personality as well. So that's a response. That's a vision that you had. It's very symbolic. So different people will see different perspectives of the same vision. So for you will have your own perspective. Just like then after that you mentioned that you trying to bang on the windows and doors to go out, right? It sounded to me as if like you were trying to escape. You needed to escape, from something. So I really resonated with that, because I like how you painted the picture. One side telling that you're crazy, you're doing stupid things.
It was really like this. When I told my psychiatrist was looking at me and he said, we became quite good friends. So he said, well, for normal adults is we are able to just take a stand, get outside of ourselves, and then say, let's stop it. Then you can stop. But I think when we are at the moment, especially when going through a condition, it's really tough for us to actually decipher what is right, what is wrong at that point in time.
Exactly that was that was the experience I had at the Singapore Pools counter. I was like telling myself, I cannot carry my child into the queue, right? So maybe I can leave my toddler outside the queue while I queue up. Then I'm like, oh my God, Trisha, how can you even think of leaving your child outside, So I was having this angel devil talk at the same time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's also a problem of obsessive, almost compulsive thing, isn't it, in your head, that you need to go and buy that ticket, right?
It's a fixated. Compelling urge to do something. I wouldn't say obsessive compulsive, because that is another category altogether.
Yeah, sure.
But it's a very compelling urge to do something.
You almost have no control over being driven there. You're being driven there. Yeah. I'm just wondering, Yen Lu, of course, you lost a son, and it's very poignant. To hear it itself is very painful. I'm just wondering too, in the process of recovery from that. I mean, it's bad enough to suffer from your own depressive episode in getting out of it, and then to know that your son suffered from that and did not get out of it. Actually, went the other way. How did you and your wife get out of this sense of, I'm sure, maybe a sense, I don't know, did you have a sense of guilt, a sense of maybe you didn't pay enough attention to him, or any of those things that I hear people say when a child, goes that way? Tell us about it.
So this is, I'm glad you raised this. This is part of the healing journey.
Yes.
So one of the first things, even the days or in the weeks after, of course, it's very tough. We have to, part of the process is grieving. especially tough for me. Actually, my wife is stronger than me, a lot stronger in that way, you know. So, but one of the things that we decided to do, one of the very first things we decided to do is, first of all, no blame, no regret. No blame, no regret. Right? Because one of the first things, if you start blaming,
There's no end to it.
Yourself, each other, whatever, right? That is exactly that would, and all to regret. Why didn't we do this? Why we should have done this? Asking those questions, of course, there wouldn't be no good answers that come out of that, wouldn't it? So one of the first things to do, those two things, we don't blame, no regret. We're not going to blame each other. We're not going to, because we know that's going to lead to nowhere. We know this is the cause of a lot of issues. We know a lot of, for example, this is a sad story to tell. A lot of couples broke up because something like this. When they lose a child, they start blaming, start regretting, and that's what happens.
Yeah.
So we just decided not to do that. We're not going to go there. And the other thing we decided to do, we started asking questions. Our son, we're relatively new. I mean, because his condition, we've been taking care of him for a while. We knew a bit, but we're still novice at this. But, he suffered from this. Unfortunately, he couldn't get out of it. But there must be many other young people out there that are suffering, going through this, what he went through. So, and what can we do about it? So that was the question that we asked. What can we do about it? Because deep in our hearts, we didn't want, as parents and human beings, we didn't want what happened to us to happen to any other parent or any other human being, for them to go through what we had to go through. So that became, so instead of focusing on our own grief, and our own suffering, and our own pain, there's a lot of grief and a lot of pain and a lot of suffering inside, we decided to ask that question and to focus on what other young people now may be going through, their suffering and their pain, and what can we do about it. So that question, and then a year later we set up the Family Foundation to address. It's called Whole Tree Foundation for Youth Wellness. It's a very big area.
Fantastic.
To address that question, the answer. And we're 10 years into this journey. So that was the beginning of that healing, I would say. And then the journey continues. I think everybody knows, Eileen and Trisha, that the journey is a journey.
Yeah. I read some studies that show that for people suffering from depressive episodes in their life, it's somehow through therapy and help from mental health specialists, and if they can just focus on other people's needs, somehow that would take them away from being focused on themselves. That will also help, apparently. That's why, by the way, I'm William Wan from the Kindness Movement. I didn't even introduce myself, but in kindness, we always believe that kindness is other-centeredness. In fact, one definition of kindness is it is other-centeredness, like what you just said. Instead of focusing on your need and asking yourself, why am I not taken care of, blah, 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 you start thinking about other people. And you get out there and you reach out to other people. And in so doing, your needs simply is no longer in focus. And you find joy and you find positivity in giving to others. So that's other-centeredness. I have another question for all of you. I'm sure during the difficult times, whether it was past or even in some situation in the present, you have friends who come around you, and all of them are good intentioned. I'm sure out there are listeners who are also asking, we've got friends who are in this state, but we don't know how to help them. So maybe you can unpack for us, feel free just to jump in again. What are the things that you think that friends will do that would be helpful for you and your experience? And what are the things that your friends did say or did do that you find not very helpful? Maybe you could tell us so that we can avoid the unhelpful things and do the helpful things. Because you know how it is like, it's like It's like, I don't have this experience. How do I? And sometimes they avoid you because they do not know how to get close to you, and they are so scared to offend you and to do the wrong thing, and so they rather than avoid it, and that's not helpful either. So how do we get alongside our friends and do the right thing?
Well, I guess once I was on the road to recovery, really wanted to start telling people about mental health so that we start talking about it like what we are doing now. So one of the ways which I started to do was to do it through music, because I love music, and together with my husband we love music as well. So we started the 3M Music Collective, where we collaborate with different musicians of different ethnic groups, age groups, and to come up with music of different genres. So why we did that was because we wanted to reach out to friends first, to friends whom have always been there for us and that we collaborated before, and through them we want to use the music to get them to start talking about mental health. So that was one way that we use music. Hey, when we started producing this music, hey, you want to listen to it, it's about mental health. So we start using the music to talk to people about it. Then on social media, we get people to tell us, hey, when they hear the music, hey, that has really helped us. So do you have more? So then we start to produce more songs and to get people to start talking about it. But on a personal level, you do see friends putting on social media, hey, today I'm feeling very down. So the first thing, I guess, the best thing that we can do is just drop them a message. Hey, how are you? But of course, we ourselves are very limited, so we can't reach out to everybody. But we take note that we can only do so much. So we take one step at a time, one friend at a time. If another one is getting better, then you ask another friend, hey, I think the other friend is having some trouble. You want to go and text him or her, and just see what's happening. And even the last few days, to tell the truth, I actually wanted to pull out of this summit. Last week, I actually called Junior. Hey, I'm very tired. Can you find a replacement? I actually got my friend to come in to replace me because I was really getting tired. So I got out another chat group and another friend said, hey, are you okay? So in a way, we are creating a ripple effect. You create a influence on somebody, and then your friend starts to reciprocate by giving you some show of kindness to you as well. And and I think the best way, at least in my opinion, is through friends. You go out there and, hey, are you okay? And through text and even through Zoom actually. Sometimes we do Zoom or house parties. Hey, just to keep in touch, to check in on friends. I think that's important. So in the end, why I decided to do it is because I realized this is more important. Having this conversation with everyone is more important than me being tired. So I really rested.
Others focused.
Yeah, I really rested last week, and I just shut myself out everything just to be ready for today.
Eileen, you need to know that I knew about it. And actually, I called you without telling you I knew about it. I called you to find out how you're doing without asking you how you're doing.
Thank you, Dr.
And then when you responded positively, I told Junior everything is okay.
Yeah.
You see, and I also had a standby just in case. But you see, it's also about being there for each other and not pushing each other into something that if for example, if you have told me that you really felt that, I wouldn't have pushed you.
Yeah. But in the end, I made my choice.
You made your choice.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we should be sensitive and give people space to recover and be ready. Yeah. So I was trying to be really sensitive,
You were very nice.
I didn't want to put stress on you. Really, I didn't want to. And so if it had come out from you when I called you and you said, hey, no, I really can't do it, I wouldn't have put stress on you.
Yeah.
But you were so positive. You said,
let's do it. Yes.
And that's how I started calling you. And the way I put it, I said, I'm calling everybody. But actually, it was for you. But because I call you, then I had to call everybody. So
you gave him more work to do.
Give me more work. Yeah. So what do you think, Trisha? How would you like your friends to reach out to you and be alongside you? And what would be right and what would not be right?
During one of my depressive episodes, I was really cooping myself up at home, not going and not stepping out of the house. This was pre-circuit breaker, okay? So I was not confined by the circuit breaker measures. Yeah, so I was cooped up at home, texted my friends who gave me support via texting. But I think I'm quite blessed to have a few friends who actually turned up at my place to visit me and to give me a small food item or something to encourage me along. Yeah. So actually when they texted me and asked me which day are you free, when can I come by, I was in my heart thinking to myself, don't come, I just want to be by myself. But I felt so bad to say that, right? I mean, people have that kind of they care for me, so I thought I shouldn't turn them down. Yeah. So each time each friend wanted to come, I said, yeah, please come. And then we will spend time chatting. They will find out about my situation, how am I coping. Whilst in that depressive episode, it's kind of difficult to integrate everything. Even though they've come and they have left, I didn't feel like so much better. I didn't feel so very much better. But it was after when the depression lifted, then I realized, hey, actually my friend did something to help me.
Your friends were kind.
Yeah, they were very kind, yes, kind, that's right. Yeah, so at least they provided me accompaniment, talked to me, and then I didn't feel so alone, actually.
So the thought that your friends are there for you makes a lot of difference. Even though when they were there, you might not have appreciated it then because of the, if you like, the cloud of heaviness upon you. But
it's like a brain fog I was in on every day.
Yeah.
So and then I even thought about suicide, not contemplated but thought about. So having people around me and friends cheering me up, I think that helped me not take the step forward. Yeah.
And Lou?
What's the question again?
Your friends. You got many friends.
Homework.
They're all well-intentioned. But I know some friends.
Well-intentioned. I mean, I remember 4 years after this happened to us, I went to see I was in Beijing to see a friend. He asked me, "Oh, are you okay now? I mean, are you over this? You know, that kind of, all in good intentions and all that. And of course, this is not the kind of thing that you're over with.
Yeah.
Even now, people ask me, it's a journey, and it's a healing journey. And I think I would, if I may speak for all of us here, that when we feel like we're able to, this is my in the work that we do, we're able to help other people and help heal other people, and we also are healing ourselves. And when we heal ourselves, we're also healing other people.
Absolutely.
Don't you have that interconnectedness of things? So that is right, isn't it? It's not totally, the work that we do is not totally altruistic in that sense. You know what I mean? It's like, I feel like the work that we do, the fact that we can able to help other people, help heal other people, we also actually is coming back and helping to heal ourselves. You know?
Sure.
So it's been that kind of journey. Going back to this, I would say, so two things that we do at Over the Rainbow. One is, I mean, Eileen talks about taking care of the inner child. Right? We call that self-care at Over the Rainbow. It's now a big topic, self-care. Everybody talks about self-care. So 8 years ago, nobody talks about self-care. Trust me. So we're actually, I would say we're the pioneer. Right? We talk about mental wellness. We don't say mental health. We say mental wellness, because mental well-being is a continuum. It's not like you have something or you don't. It's no matter where you are in life, what your mental says, you can always be better, have more happiness, have more fulfillment, have more well-being in life. Mental well-being, right? Mental wellness. Number two is self-care. We talk about self-care a lot. That's why we're out there, and we have a lot. Self-care composed of physical self-care. That's all the things we do physically, intellectual and mental self-care, curiosity, a sense of keeping hungry and keeping foolish, emotional, letting go of negative emotions, toxic, embrace positive emotion, cultivate positive emotions, right? Loving kindness, compassion, joy, equanimity, your social well-being, all the stuff that we talked about, and also spiritual, also very important.
Yendu, the good news is it's all in my book.
Thank you.
Yeah, you need to get his book.
Yeah,
The self-care thing.
yeah. So we talk a lot about the 5 pillars, the
Yeah.
5 pillars of well-being, and
Yeah.
what we can do, and also yeah. So anyway, that's kind of the journey, and that's
Yeah, you know, Yenlu, in a way I'm a bit surprised, and we're bringing this to a close. You know how fast time has gone because we're having such a wonderful conversation. So guys out there, thank you for being with us. I'm going to bring this to a close in a couple of minutes. But you know, Yenlu, when you talk about self-care and how surprising it is that nobody talked about it, but actually, I know of a guy who talked about it 2,000 years ago. He said, love your neighbors as you would love yourself. And a lot of us forget that. We keep talking about loving the neighbors, but we never talk about the half of it, which is loving yourself. Because I mean, it is logical that if you can't love yourself, how can you go love your neighbor, right? So you love yourself, you care for yourself. But if you only care for yourself, that's selfishness. But if you care for yourself so that you become all the better to care for other people, then you're okay. I will close with this story. 3 years ago, I was in London. And I called a friend, a fellow lawyer, who used to be in Singapore and migrated there. And I spent half a day with him going on a little Times cruise. I asked him, and that was about October. I asked him, how's everything? Winter was coming, you know. And winter is usually a very depressive state for most people, you know, in countries where you have a winter. And my friend actually lost his wife some years ago, you know, about that time, in January, about that, many years ago. And a great, fine, young lawyer, wonderful guy. I asked him, you know, how's everything? And he was sharing with me, yeah, practice is going well. Of course, it's not, you know, English, not white, so, you know, there are some challenges, but otherwise everything goes. I had no clue that he was going into a depressive episode. Soon after I left in October, came back, in January I got the news. He took his own life. So out there, you know, if you know of friends who are having difficulties and you see signs of depression, please help them. Reach out to them, get them help. Encourage them to get help. Because these are more common than you think. And we would have succeeded today in this Mom Space Summit, in this particular session, if we can just help you to be aware that there is hope and there is light at the end of the tunnel. That when you get into the forest and all the snakes and all the bats and all the tigers and all the wild boars and all the dark things that you see, you can actually get out of that darkness. You can make a journey out if you get help. And these are good examples. Eileen and Yenlu and Trisha, they've been there and they've come out. This is not a professional talk about how to get mentally well. This is a sharing of ordinary people, but special people, wonderful people, marvelous people, willing to open their hearts and share about very private and personal and painful experiences. I really appreciate them. Thank you so much, and we'll see you hopefully another time. Thank you.